to the Diablo podcast. I am your host, Flux. We are talking about items this week, all kinds of item stuff. And starting off, we've got Wolfpaq on the line. Say hi.
Hello.
And DiablosMinion.
Hey, what's up?
And this was mostly Wolfpaq's idea for this podcast because you've been fascinated by the item modifiers. You went through a bunch of screenshots that we saw and looked at all of the prefixes and suffixes. And your biggest interest, I understand, is in charms and the special modifiers found on charms, which is really relevant for Diablo III. Can you tell us something about that, Wolfpaq?
Well, I mean, it's not my biggest interest. It was something I was really excited about, specifically seeing that charms had the exact same prefixes and suffixes, but different ranges on the values. Specifically, they had 1 to each attribute instead of 3 to 10. But anyways, yeah, charms are gone until who knows when. So.
Yeah, the charms and the talisman have been shelved for a vanilla D3's launch, at least.
Too complicated.
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked well with the PS3 version, probably, so.
Oh, no.
The current website vote is about the item colors. And there's been some big changes from Diablo 2. There's no longer a gold item color for uniques. There's now legendary items, which are orange. And that's sort of a controversial issue. Do either of you guys think that's worth spending any words on, or it's just whatever, it's color?
Yeah, my vote on the website was I'd really have to see it in game before I give my feedback. I mean, but honestly, I don't really care.
I don't really care. It's just a color, and everyone's gonna get accustomed to seeing the orange and shiny pickup.
Well, you guys are real advocates for the Diablo style there. I'll kind of miss the orange. I mean, it's not like I'm going to cancel my non-existent pre-order because there's not orange items or something. But
gold, you mean gold?
Gold, yeah. There we go. See, I've already been converted to the new color scheme.
That's right.
I kind of liked the orange in Diablo 2 for crafted items, but they never updated the crafted recipes after the first batch, so they kind of they fell by the wayside.
Yeah, there were only a couple slots where crafted items could be amazing.
And that's interesting in Diablo 3 because we have crafted items, of course, via the artisans, not artisans. Someday I'll learn that word.
Yeah.
And they're not any special color at all. The stuff the stuff artisans make.
Are they just yellow?
They're blue or yellow or purple. I mean, blue or yellow or orange, depending on what kind of item they turn out to be.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's what it does.
Like if you look in the wiki on the recipes page or on the materials page even, there's pictures of there's screenshots from the Artisans video and you can see the recipes. God damn it. You can see the screenshots from the Artisans video and some of the items are blue and some of them are yellow. I mean the names. And apparently that just indicates, if there's 1 or 2 mods it's blue and if there's more it's yellow.
Okay.
And ultimately there will be recipes from the Artisans that are also legendary and set, and I guess those will just be orange. I'm not sure if I like that or not. I mean, I guess it is what it is.
I'm not sure about legendary being crafted. That's kind of odd to me. Those are special. In my opinion, they shouldn't be just made. Those are made like a long time ago and supposed to be empowered and stuff.
Yeah, it's not something your blacksmith whips out for a bag of wood in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the set items being legendary color orange as well?
I don't have a problem with that. I think that's acceptable. Because when you hover over the item, which you're going to do anyway, you'll see right at the bottom set bonus for 2, 3, 4 pieces, etc.
It's not really a change except in the color. I mean, if you look at the higher level sets added in D2X, a lot of those are essentially just like 4 unique items that happen to do more stuff together.
Yeah.
They've got tons of bonuses and special types of modifiers you don't get on rares and magical items. So I guess the only real change is it's not a different color, and it's just it doesn't seem like it's a special classification anymore. But I did like seeing the green.
Yeah.
And it'll seem weird, like DM just said, that legendaries is almost like it's a catch-all description. I mean, like it's these super special high-level items, and it's like any special item that's not a rare, and it's like a set item. It seems like they need maybe they could bring back gold for the really good legendaries. I mean, they're not going to, but.
Well, who knows? Maybe they'll have new item types in an expansion that could use gold. That would, like, if I'm really hoping that rune words make a comeback. Not as they were in D2, obviously, but I just think as an item type they were pretty cool. Maybe gold for rune words.
Would you use gems for those, gem words? Because the runes are for skills, so we can't really have rune words.
Oh, well, right, yeah, no, that makes sense. I was hoping with rune words making a return that item runes would make a return as well, as opposed to skill runes, but maybe they'd have to call them something differently to avoid confusing people.
Yeah, it's weird they called runes, given what they were in D2, but
yeah,
they don't seem to let precedent hold them back too often.
No.
I don't think we'll get gold just because of the whole yellow versus gold color was so close together, which is what people have complained about. But of course, then the question I had, in the new vote, it's like, well, why didn't they just make legendaries gold and change rares to orange? But maybe gold and orange are too close together. I mean, we've never seen a legendary or we've seen rares, but we haven't seen legendary items in the game, so we don't really know what shade of orange they're using.
I think they could do the colors. In Diablo II, the yellow and the gold were kind of the same, but this is a new game with better graphics, obviously, and I think they could pronounce those colors better. Yeah,
like a lighter shade of yellow and a darker shade of gold or something. Well, since we're on the topic of colors, why don't we talk about armor dyes for a second, which I had a couple of funny thoughts about. Are you guys down with the whole armor dyes system? Will you actually bother to collect colors and change your character's equipment, or will you don't care what they look like?
I will definitely gather dyes. Whether or not I'll actually use them, I'm not sure. I'll probably just use them as a means to become rich, because people out there will care about them, But as far as using them myself, it's doubtful.
Yeah.
How about you, DM?
Out of all my pre-planning that I've thought about for this game, I've not once included dyes in that equation. If I can find, the rarest dye, I'll probably end up using it. Or, like Wolfpaq said, selling it to someone that really wants it.
We don't know just how colorful the items are going to be. We've seen these pictures of the gear sets and stuff, and they're pretty multicolored. I mean, like the witch doctors especially, look like hula dancers. They have many, many colors and stripes, and we've been told the dyes, it's not like a palette swap, it's going to it'll change like the border of the item or the stitching or something. It's not the entire thing. Kind of in D2X, we get those sort of Fisher-Price colored weapons where the whole weapon is like this glowing neon orange or purple or something like that. Apparently it's a little more subtle in D3, and apparently they're called armor dyes, not weapon dyes, so I assume you can't change the color of your staff or your sword or whatever.
Well, the effect of the weapon will be portrayed in-game.
Do you think that elemental damage is going to cause an weapon glow?
I think it'll cause flames. I mean, I think it's really visible.
It's really, so if it's cold, there'll be like...
Yeah, there's like little
frost
of frost and stuff. Yeah, and like little crackling lightning bolts and green. I mean, you can actually see. I remember playing it, or maybe in one of the videos, you could actually see little puffs of like green poison coming up from a poisoned weapon.
That's cool.
As the character moved around.
Yeah, it may be hard to allow weapons to be dyed if you also need to be able to show that it's flaming or poisoned or frost damage as well.
I'm sure we'll all play around with armor dyes a little bit early on, just for the hell of it. You'll find one and be like, let's see what my armor looks like with, yellow or something.
Yeah.
But I could imagine maybe end a game, if you've really got your equipment set and you're not going to change much around and you've got time to kill, you might be like, I want everything to be dark purple or, black or something like that, just to feel cooler.
Yeah.
I mean, if especially, we don't know what how the interface or the BNet interface is going to work. I mean, it might be possible that we would have access to our characters. We don't think there's going to be like some big town where you stand around and chat like World of Warcraft or like an MMO. But it's not out of the question that you might have access to your character's equipment and, your avatar while you're in chat channels. You can certainly play dress up Barbie with your armor dyes at that point.
I'm really hoping that there's a preview option so that
before you dye it.
Yeah, so I don't say, "Oh, I like the color blue," and then put it on and it looks all purplish or something.
Or you don't know how much of the armor will change, or if it's going to clash with your other equipment, or
right.
if it will match your eyes or your hair or your pretty nose.
Exactly.
And we don't know, as you say with the preview option, as far as we know, armor dyes are single use. You use it once on one piece of equipment and the dye package vanishes. So if you have a red armor that you like and you get, a purple dye and you use it, then it's purple. And I think you can maybe just click a button to remove the armor dye entirely, but you couldn't go back to red unless you found another red dye. Can you guys imagine any color that would be so cool you would pay for it like a virtual item, or enjoy it as a quest reward from an NPC, or maybe if they had some super rare dye that was given out like in BlizzCon attendees in the goodie bag? If it made you glow or gave you like a flame outline or something.
I was about to say that, like the glow from the epic sets from D2 maybe, or like an aura, a flame or something maybe. Be pretty cool.
If I had more money than I knew what to do with, I might say, I wonder what it'd look like all green or all black.
Like DM just said with the bonuses from D2, if it gave you a total glow. Or what if it could make you like a chameleon, like it makes you like the Predator for 10 seconds or something. Like you blend into the background if you don't move. Or, it turns you into a monster or something. I mean, we're getting a little far afield here, but there's obviously a lot of stuff they could do with those.
Necromancer turned into the ghoul and the assassin faded.
Yeah, it sounds almost like we're coming up with a new artisan like the alchemist.
Yeah, the dyer.
Right.
How about if dyes added stats? If you put it on an item, say it gave you plus 10% fire resistance or something. I mean, okay, resistances don't go by percentages anymore, but just for the sake of the argument. It would be like, enchanting or imbuing a given item, and it's on that item forever until you change the dye.
Yeah, well, if they did that, then at that point it becomes less of just a visual thing and a character boost. So, of course, I think everyone would be going for whatever dye happens to help you survive or deal more damage.
How about like April Fool's items, and there's a dye that makes you look like a polka dot bunny or something.
Or a rainbow.
Yeah, but it adds 10% to your greed. It's like, given that everybody wore Shakos, wore Harlequin's Quest pretty much uncomplainingly in D2.
Yeah.
I think that proves that we'll sacrifice, fashion for performance.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Item modifiers. That was your area of interest, Wolfpaq, and we kind of got away from that. But there's some interesting ones. As you pointed out, the charms had a different thing. Anything else about those you noticed?
Well, the two most interesting item modifier or attributes that I saw in the screenshots were actually on gems. As we know, the twink item, because as high as you level up a gem, it still won't have a level requirement. So it's just really interesting to see that Sapphire will give you life leech. And let me see, one of them in the helm will give you movement speed, like two things that we weren't sure or didn't know. Okay, it's Amethyst. Amethyst in the helm will give you an increased movement speed, and Sapphire in the weapon will give you life leech. And it's at the second level of gem, Flawed will give you 3% life leech in the weapon, which is pretty awesome.
And there's 14 levels of gems. So.
Yeah, there's 14 levels of gems and the possibility of having more than one socket in your weapon, and then add dual wielding to that, and you can potentially come up with a very high number from gems alone of life leech, which is very exciting for barbarians and demon hunters and monks. A little disappointing maybe if you're a caster. I've always planned to play the wizard, and I'm very excited by life leech, so I don't know how I should feel.
But you couldn't have life leech on a caster in D2 anyway, so.
Right.
I'm actually surprised that there's going to be any life leech, or more than very small amounts, because all they've talked about was changing the combat system and removing health potions and adding in those health orbs. Seems like their whole goal was to make it harder to heal. One of the things that experienced D2 players have often complained about is that when Jay Wilson and the other devs talk about healing, they talk about drinking pots, and you don't really drink pots at high level in D2. You just have 40% life leech.
Yeah,
and damage reduction.
Yeah, so it's like they're talking about, they're checking about fixing a game feature that didn't exist past normal difficulty for expert players, and it's like, well, who cares?
It'll be interesting to see too how important life leech becomes. Like, will hell difficulty become much easier if you have a perfect or radiant star sapphire in your weapon?
Oh, you even know the names of the high level gems. Bonus points there.
I just saw radiant star. But because if Flawed is number rank 2, then you just add 1 to the rank, and that's what percentage you'll get, assuming it's a linear increase. So we're talking about 15% life leech from the rank 14 Sapphire.
I would guess more than linear as well. More than arithmetic increase.
Yeah, it could be.
as ultra rare as they say the high level gems will be, it seems like just adding 1% of something wouldn't be enough if it takes you, 600 hours of gameplay to go from level 13 to 14 or something.
Well, I guess we'll find out. Because the other thing is chipped rubies will add strength if you put it in anything but helm or weapon. And you can see that the lowest level adds 2, and then the flawed sapphire will add willpower when socketed in other, and the flawed adds 4, so that's the only thing I have to base it on, my guesstimate of a linear increase. But like you said, the other attributes could change it. We have no idea, basically, at this point. And also, all these screenshots are from BlizzCon October, and still have dexterity and strength, which we know are gone. So
one of the other ones I thought was interesting. One of them is Ornate, which gives you more. It makes the item more valuable when you sell it. Okay, first of all, what is the real world logic of this? What is the utility? I mean, obviously this is not the point in the game, but I just found it amusing. What's the point to the vendor in paying more money for something that's only useful because he'll pay more money for it?
Well, maybe it looks cool.
But
because you've heard of.
Did he sell it to another vendor for even more money?
Yeah.
I mean, there's an infinite regression on it. Eventually, the king trades half his kingdom for a toaster oven. It's like.
Yeah.
I don't know what the logic of that is. It amused me though.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard of weapons, right? That are not for actual fighting, but sort of for show, like you put on your wall or whatever. Like.
Like Lord of the Rings collectibles.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're not going to take it out and go to town with it, but it looks cool just sitting in a corner.
What the hell's that Frostmourne? That's that Blizzard sword they sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
If you actually hit anything with it, it'll shatter and kill you, but it's fun to, it's shiny.
Yeah, it's fun to look at. So, I mean, I think that's really exciting. And the other, because this is the first, insight we've gotten into what the economy will be like, and the fact that they're including these attributes, including gold find, we've seen make a return, and increased sale price to vendor shows that, gold is important, and it's not going to be as widely available as it was in Diablo II. And also Ornate is going to be like the crafted killer. Like when you see it show up when you're trying to craft your perfect killing item, you're just going to be like, no, it just ruined the amount you could get for it on whatever trading system gets implemented.
It might just be, you have your stack of your scrolls of wealth, and just whenever you find an Ornate, you immediately sell it with one of those.
Yep.
Everything else, you're either going to dump it or salvage it.
Yeah.
So what if you equip a whole set of Ornate armor? Maybe Ornate should also give you a bonus to greed or something like that if you actually equip it. It's kind of funny.
That would be cool. There should be a set item, or an item set that every item in it is Ornate, like Midas's Touch or something.
That'd be cool.
Just for amusement.
One of the funny things that we've seen with playing the demos, obviously we don't know how much of the economy is finalized at this point. It could be totally different. But the vast majority of gold you obtain in D3 is for picking up stuff. Items sell for very, very little gold, especially compared to D2. You can see the sale prices on some of the items in the displays, in the item screenshots and such.
Yeah.
And gems are selling for 1 gold, and runes sell for 1 gold. And you can routinely find stuff that sells for, 3, 4, 5, 8 gold from the same monster that'll drop a stack of 25 gold kind of thing. And they might drop multiple stacks. And you obviously get more gold dropped than item dropped. So
right.
It was, you can't really extrapolate that much from the BlizzCon demos at this point. But I wasn't even, if I'd been looking for gold, to save up for my characters when playing, I wouldn't even have bothered picking anything up. It wasn't worth the time to pick it up, put it in your inventory, and then go sell it, just in terms of how much gold it was worth. I mean, some people are completists and will sell everything, but it does seem like you will not be selling much of what you find unless you just happen to find it right before you're going back to town anyway or something.
Yeah, you'd probably be salvaging a lot.
Which would make Ornate more useful. The thing with salvaging, though, again, I'm extrapolating from BlizzCon demo last year, is that most of the items just give you, common materials. And everything gives you common materials. So it seems like very quickly you'll have, an infinite stack of the common stuff, and that won't even be of any use to you. It'd be like picking up cracked sashes or something.
Yeah, well, you'd hope that magic items will have a chance to drop a rare one or a rare material, and then rare items will have a much higher chance to drop a rare material. So hopefully Because, yeah, if you're just getting a massive stack of common material and you can't craft anything with it, I imagine that would be very frustrating.
Well, I mean, the rare recipes will require, some bone or wood or common scraps or something. But it seems like you get, if you break down some super legendary item, you'll get 5 bone, 5 wood, and 1 super rare, ethereal essence or something like that, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And all you'd really want is the ethereal essence, because every crossbow and broken axe you find will give you the common stuff. So, I'm hoping it's changed in some way, but just based on how it was last year's BlizzCon, you wouldn't pick up anything unless it was at least magical. I mean, you would never even consider picking up a white item or a gray item or anything like that.
Yeah, I guess it's only going to give you. Well, who knows? Maybe higher level recipes are going to need big stacks of common material. And if a level 60 recipe requires 40 or 50 common materials per crafting, and you're going to craft it 100, 200 times, that adds up really quick.
Yeah.
So
I think the limiter will always be the uncommon materials.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying it won't be, but hopefully it'd give you some, because we don't want an economy where, it's not worth, or we don't want a game where it's not worth picking up loot. That's just not, desirable.
Well, that's kind of what we had in D2, but I mean, you didn't pick up 90% of what you saw. Or more, probably.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, eventually you'll get to the point where you stop picking things up if it's not magical, probably. I mean, we're talking like Endgame here, though, not when we first get started and everything's new. You picking everything up.
Everything.
Like when I start a new character on like the ladder, on a fresh ladder, I always pick up everything.
Well, you're poor.
Exactly.
Everything is valuable then.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually we get, more choosy.
Yeah. Which is fine.
And it might be interesting with the shared stash if we, maybe you just want to put a ton of materials in the shared stash so your brand new character could immediately try crafting cool stuff. Although I guess you could just craft the yourself and then trade them the item, twink them the items. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how they work this stuff out.
Twink that in the Radiant Star Amethyst.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll work not having any sea-level requirements on gems at all? I mean, if level 14 gems are giving you plus 50 to all stats or something, that seems like it'd be wildly overpowered. It
would make sense for them to have level requirements because it would make them insanely overpowered considering how much time is going to have to be spent to make them. It just makes sense for them to be, good.
I don't think plus 50 to all stats is something we'll see on the gem. I think plus 15 to all stats is more likely something we'll see. And sure, from level 1 to 20 or 30, plus 15 to all stats is probably going to be super powerful, but normal difficulty is not supposed to be hard. And if you've taken the time to get a set of gems, that are extremely powerful, and I think part of the benefit of that is you can give it to one of your alts, and how your alt has, 5 Radiant Star gems, drastically increasing his kill speed, and it lets him just blow through normal difficulty, which is what you're going to want to do, because normal's the most boring part of Diablo, really, because nothing good drops there, and being low level is not enjoyable in any RPG. You want to hit level 20, 25, 30 as fast as you can, so you can start to reap the benefits of the build that you have planned. So I don't think that no level requirements is a big issue. In Nightmare, plus 30 to 1 stat, or if you have a helm with 3 gems in it giving you plus 90, I think it'll start to become a little more balanced. And by the time you get to Hell, that's just not going to work out anymore, because you're going to need to have a more well-balanced set of items, I would imagine.
Okay, we're going to add in Neinball here and see if this works out with 4 people. He had some items thoughts as well. You there, Neinball?
Guten Tag.
Okay, we're going to try with 4 people here, so we'll see how this goes. Wolfpaq or DM, do you guys play World of Warcraft?
No.
I played it for a long time, but I quit a year ago.
So I had one thing to point out to Neinball here. We've had this sort of debate going on the main page where I make sarcastic comments about World of Warcraft, and there's always 3 people who are like, you shouldn't say that, it's a great game. So I have a question for you, Neinball, as a proud World of Warcraft player, and you can answer A or B. Okay, choice A. Are all WoW players disappointed in Cataclysm that is widely regarded as a failed expansion? Or B. are all WoW players wild fanboys who are totally in denial about A, and that's why they're the most thin-skinned, humorless MMORPG players on the internet? I think that's a fair choice. I think that's a fair choice of options. Which one do you think is true?
That one is a tough one. I'm probably gonna go with
terrible.
So obviously, not everybody hates World of Warcraft. It's still got 11 some odd million subscribers, etc. There have been some drop-off. How do you feel about Cataclysm? Are you disappointed in the endgame stuff, or you think it's as good as the other two expansions?
The start of the expansion, the endgame, as far as rating goes, is better than what Wrath of the Lich King was. Because Wrath of the Lich King was, hey, let's just walk in an hour later, we're done, we've got everything. There's actually a bit of a challenge in the hard modes at the endgame content. Unfortunately, that is the only aspect of the in-game content that's like really engaging at the moment. Everything else, there's just not really anything else to do. So outside of raiding, I don't really have anything else to spend my time with in World of Warcraft.
That's kind of what I've heard from other people, and that people I know who have been playing it or who have quit playing it or just are basically waiting for Diablo 3 to show up, have said that they're kind of disappointed in the amount of in-game stuff and the changes made in Cataclysm. So I don't think. I don't play it. I don't pretend to have any personal insight, but I don't think it's wildly unrealistic to say that some fans are disappointed in how this expansion is going, and they're hoping for more from the next one. That, and it's fun to joke about World of Warcraft.
Oh, I'll agree with that.
The funny thing is, there's all this, it's kind of become this meme of Diablo players and Diablo readers kind of bash World of Warcraft. Obviously we have the whole too colorful thing, which came up right when the game came out. And for you, Wolfpaq, or not, were you playing WoW at that point, Wolfpaq, back in 2008?
Yeah, I was.
And what did you think of the color controversy? I mean, with your first-hand WoW knowledge and eyes.
I looked at the screenshots, and I could sort of see where they were coming from, but then I also played Diablo II extensively, probably more than I played WoW, and the colors were not as dark in Diablo II as everyone seemed to think they were, especially, like certain areas like Bale's throne room, all of Act 1 outdoors, Act 2 outdoors. There are plenty of colorful areas, so I didn't think it was a big deal. But then I was playing WoW. I don't think WoW is a bad game, so.
And what did you think, DM? You weren't playing, like myself, you don't play World of Warcraft. No. What did you think of the color controversy?
I kind of just blew it off. I mean, I liked it. I still do. It's different, and
You mean you like Diablo 3's look, or?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You like the color controversy?
Yeah, I loved it.
I was actually a fan of World of Warcraft's look. I had, for a long time during pre-game, I had a World of Warcraft screenshot as my desktop background, just because I liked how it looked. And then I thought the color controversy was silly. I mean, for one thing, World of Warcraft was, wildly popular, the most popular MMORPG basically ever. Possibly the most popular action RPG or computer RPG, depending on how you define that term. And I didn't think Diablo 3 was overly colorful or whatever. But, but other people, a lot of the readers kind of pushed this joke, and it became this meme. And so now I make references to it in the news page without really caring about it myself one way or the other. But it's funny how people get stirred up over this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if Blizzard is aware of this stuff. I remember talking to Bashiak. Remember when the male wizard had that whole starfish hat thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people were just like, oh, it's the worst animation ever. We hate him. He looks gay. He looks effeminate. he's too Asian, whatever all the complaints were. And I had this was like all of our comments for like a week. We had like 300-page comment news items in a row, and the forums were all full of it, and the BNet forums were full of it. And I remember asking Bashiak at some point around that time, via IM, I was talking to him one day, and I just said, so is the artist who did the male wizard like, hiding in a closet and sobbing? And Bashiak's like, no one even knows about this. We don't really pay attention to that stuff. I'm like, well, that's bullshit. What's the point in us talking about it if we can't affect someone's your company?
Wow.
But I think that sort of demonstrates that these things are, the fans get all caught up in it, but probably not so much the developers.
We sit here and have in-depth, heated discussions, trolling flame wars and all that, and the developers are sitting there having a cup of coffee, saying about how was that Heat game last night.
As an active World of Warcraft player, which of course means you have horrible sense of color and design, Neinball, what do you think about armor dyes?
I probably will end up using them to a certain extent, maybe finding just a color combination that looks good, but I guess it won't be one of my priority things of going crazy over trying to define the actual look. At least just making the gear look unified.
So a new topic, unless someone else has something they're dying to talk about with items.
There were like two things I wanted to point out.
Go for it.
Before we move on from item mods, there's an item mod called Peerless, which increases the base experience you get per kill, which is pretty interesting. It's not something we saw in Diablo 1, but there's two things about it that are interesting. One, that it exists in the game at all. Like, this seems to me like Blizzard's recognition that once you've beat the game once or twice, it's not going to be fun for you to be playing through at normal pace. So I'm imagining that players who like to power level are going to be putting together an entire set of Peerless items and be getting hundreds of bonus experience every time they kill a monster. The second thing that's interesting to me is that it's an actual number, not a percentage. A lot of games, like Torchlight, for example, will have items that give you 1% more XP, 2% more XP, but because it's just a flat number, that means that you'll get the same bonus experience from killing like a base fallen as you would from killing like a shaman, which we know nothing about XP values, but my guess is it means you're going to be getting more than you would if you had like 2%, 3% more XP. So I think that's a really cool item mod in addition to the game.
That's one of the things I remember some people going through and saying that stat is useless since you're supposed to be around level 60 at the end of hell. But we don't know how much grinding that actually entails, of having to go back and grind certain areas to meet, the particular level that you have to get in order to beat this boss to move on to the next act or whatever. So I think that would, still be useful.
They've said that they don't want there to be grinding, so they don't want you to repeat areas to reach 60. But, you might, obviously there's some leeway in that, depending on how, generally when you get to hell, you're not doing full clears anymore. At least I wasn't in D2.
Yeah, and the other thing is, this is less for someone who's playing like straight from start through the game, but more for someone who, say, gets a rush from their level 60 buddy. And so they have every waypoint from Act 1 to Act 4 in normal. And so they have put on their full Peerless set and just go start killing. And as soon as they hit a level where they've gone past where they're getting optimal experience, they just hit up the closest waypoint, shoot off to the next area where they'll get optimal XP, and so on and so forth. That's how I imagine it working.
Yeah, that was my thought, basically, just rushing and...
Yeah, it's like the difference of just taking the road, straight from the rogue encampment all the way monastery, just killing the things that you come across along the road and the particular quest points, as opposed to the level that you'll get if you actually take the time to go off to the side and, kill the champion packs and things like that.
Yeah, and right, exactly, and hop into the caves and stuff.
Exactly.
Getting all
you
wouldn't even want that at the start, because you'd want to do all of the areas because you need items. But if you're twinked, you don't care. So
yeah, exactly.
The interesting thing that I thought about the experience thing, given that it's plus base bonuses instead of a percentage. I mean, there were a few items in D2 added in later that gave you experience percentage plus.
Oh, that's right.
But they were very late. That was super late game stuff, which is when you wanted it. Adding 3% early on will be nothing. You're getting 5 per fallen, but you want percentage late game, especially in D2, as much of a grind as it is, and probably in Torchlight or other games as well. Whereas in D3, as we've been told, you're supposed to get to level 60 just doing the basic content without grinding. So you wouldn't even care if you got, I guess it would help a little, maybe you'd hit level 60 in Act 3 instead of Act 4, on in Hell, but it wouldn't make a whole lot of difference to you late game, whereas in D2, it's the whole point of your late game existence is getting a little bit more experience.
We don't exactly know what route you're supposed to take in order to get to 60 by the end of Hell, because they said it was possible also to not, be that level by the time you finish. Do they expect you to get 60, not so much grinding, but going in every little nook and cranny, hitting up every little dungeon, completing every quest on your way through there? Will that get you to 60 before? It's like we don't actually know the amount of pacing and how much that plus experience would really help on your first playthrough as opposed to your second or third, character that you're going and leveling up.
Or 50th.
Yeah.
And also, we don't know anything about the experience bonuses and parties. It made a huge difference in D2. If I remember games in D2, you'd play with like 8 people in all of Act 1 and you'd be at level 20 or something. You'd just be way above the curve.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of fun, but then you would crash. You get to Act 2 and you'd be level 25 when you finish that, and then you'd level up like once in all of Act 3, and it was like, oh, this sucks. I can't use any more skills. I'm in the same level forever. So it wasn't really, fun. I kind of wonder if that's what will happen in D3 with these plus experience items. Maybe you get to level 18 really quickly, and then like you level up twice in all of Act 2, and it's just like, ugh, this sucks.
I can't imagine taking the time to put a set together like this and then not getting a rush like that. Though that just wouldn't make sense to me, because you're right, that would be a very frustrating experience to do an entire act and only level once. And
we have to assume there will be. I mean, obviously the equipment we've seen is only for low level characters, and maybe they only have the plus experience for low level characters, which is interesting because there was nothing like that in D2. It was only the percentage stuff for high level characters.
Yeah.
But in theory, you'll be getting, if you're getting plus 7 experience per kill in Act 1, you'll get, plus 12 in Act 2 and plus 30 in Act 3 or something like that.
So on and so forth.
There will be higher levels of that modifier that will continue to be beneficial. Or maybe it becomes percentage based once you start finding stuff like in Nightmare.
Yeah.
Chirp, chirp.
Yes.
Chirp, chirp.
Yes.
I actually have some like tumbleweed sound effects. I was thinking instead of editing out the pauses, I could actually put a little.
I could always take away
Old West sound effect.
I could take away Birdie's mirror and we can listen to him for a few minutes.
Your bird has a mirror?
Oh yeah, he loves it.
Does he have armor dies as well? Does he wonder where the bird in the window goes when it's not there?
I don't know if I think he actually realizes that it's himself. He's pretty intelligent, so I guess that would make it so that he's narcissistic.
That's better. Do you ever a stupid bird or a narcissistic bird?
So there was one more thing I wanted to talk about for item mods, and that was, if it's alright, if we go back.
Go right ahead. We're still on that topic.
Alright, so one thing that we saw in those screenshots were exceptional and superior items. The exceptional was an axe or a weapon modifier and it added minimum damage, and superior was an armor modifier and it enhanced defense, which was something we saw in D2, and it actually enhanced the defense quite a bit. For an Act 1 item, it was like 38% enhancement, which is for a plain item, it's huge, but then the question is, what is the point of having superior items? In Diablo 2, they were extremely valuable because you took plain items and you put runes in them to make rune words, and the superior bonus of enhanced defense or plus damage or plus attack rating, whatever, would stay with the item into the rune word. But Diablo 3 doesn't have rune words, and so my thinking was maybe it's a crafting thing. Maybe there'll be high level crafting items that actually require you to have a base axe before you can craft it into a superior axe or something. But I was looking at the wiki earlier in the podcast, and it looks like it's the only materials for crafting recipes are just components. There's no weapon material. So yeah, I'm just really curious what the point is of exceptional and superior weapons or items.
It could be something different from what it was in Diablo 2, and those are actual prefixes and suffixes towards the base item that just add, a percentage increase, that where you don't necessarily have just a base superior item that you can then put a rune word in, but the superior item would actually turn it into like a blue, magic item, or it would be a prefix, that would be added onto a rare.
Well, but the screenshots, the color was white, which is
okay.
If it was blue, that would totally make sense. But I'm just not sure. Maybe imbuing or something.
Yeah, maybe that mod can occur with blue items as well. I mean, superior couldn't spawn with magical, with prefixes or suffixes in D2. It was only useful for rune words.
Oh, that's a good point.
But maybe in D3, that's kind of like a bonus. It's like finding a socket in an item. It's just sort of another thing that can go on it.
Yeah, that's it. So if you find a legendary that happens to be superior, you'd be
all the better. It's almost like ethereal, except you can repair it.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's interesting. I like that. More variety.
Yeah, and we really know almost I mean, we'll know more about items, the first day of the beta than we do now, just in terms of people actually seeing them and seeing kind of how the families are grouped, not even including the possibility of data mining all of the stuff off the CD, which we certainly hope to do, but
yeah.
Just in terms of what people find, just seeing, 1,000 screenshots of items, you'll kind of get a sense of how the modifiers are organized and how they function upon each other.
As long as it's well balanced, I really don't care.
Oh, well, how could it not be? It's a Diablo game.
Oh, well,
Everything's always perfectly balanced in them.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So we have two other items topics we can hit on here. We can talk about in-game variety or gear sets. Which one leaps out at you guys first?
In-game. I have a couple points on that.
Yeah, I would say in-game. There's something that I actually wanted to bring up as far as all that ties into the last topic, as far as the item prefixes and things like that.
Go right ahead. We'll just segue into in-game with that.
Okay, I guess it's just one of the things like what Wolf mentioned about the Peerless, the plus experience, and then you have like the plus gold or the ornate, the ones that vendor for more. That also to me kind of stood out as just a way of making good rare items rarer, because you can go through and craft a legendary that has that's one of its random prefixes or suffixes ends up being ornate, which at that point drastically reduces its usefulness. You end up just chucking it or salvaging it to get the mats back to try and go through and make another one. It kind of adds it in as like a bad roll that you could get when you're going to crafting your in-game items, that makes you constantly want to go back and do it again and again and again, to kind of draw out that curve to where you actually are fully decked out.
Well, what if the ornate property allows you to salvage something better out of it? It has to be an ornate item for you to get a certain type of, like instead of common scraps, like rare scraps or something. So you'd have to decide whether you want to sell it or would you salvage it.
Yeah, that's interesting. There could actually also be a modifier that just increased the odds of salvaging something, which would be kind of weird, but I guess obviously you just salvage it then. If the modifier said plus 25% chance of finding subtle essence when you salvage this, it would be like, hey, salvage bait. I mean, because ornate seems to be a modifier that's mainly there to make you want to sell stuff. So they could make a modifier that was mainly there. So, say the modifier adds, 50% weapon damage and plus 50% chance of getting rare essences when you break it down for materials. Then it's like, well, do I use this or do I scrap it and hope I get a rare material? Obviously, that'll depend on how rare the rare materials are.
I was under the assumption that when you salvage something, you're going to get something regardless.
You get something, but the rarer ones are...
A chance?
Yeah, it's gambling-like.
Okay.
And I don't think you will ever get the really rare materials from non-set, non-legendary type items.
Oh, yeah.
But you aren't guaranteed to get the good ones from sets or legendaries either. And again, like everything else, we only know a little bit about this. We only know like 4 or 5 types of materials, and there'll probably be, at least a dozen or something, including some really rare stuff that you can only get from from gems and runes and such like that.
Chinchilla's getting it, ain't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little bit of Wolfpaq's chinchilla in the background there. If you could, it's not that audible through the podcast last week, I noticed, but we can hear it through our headphones.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I mean, my computer does need to be powered, so.
Could you get a noisy pet, DM?
No, I got a dog, but he ain't in the room.
Alas. I have cats, they're pretty much silent.
Unless they want something.
Yeah, like falling off the ledge of my loft. So, in-game variety. One thing Jay Wilson has said is to paraphrase, he said, if we do our jobs right, in-game gear will be a mixture of rare set and legendary items. As opposed to all legendary, I guess. You guys down with that concept? Do you like the mixture possibility?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just the more actually having the craftable items be useful in game will actually make it to where there is a point of having those professions. Otherwise, you'll find people will just skip the artisans altogether, with the exception of maybe the jewel crafter for, the socketing and upping your gems, and the enchanter for, adding the enchants or additional properties to your weapons. Whereas the blacksmith would just be, completely just left to the wayside because he doesn't make anything useful.
Yeah, just add sockets and that's it. Like, rare recipes wouldn't be sold or valued if there's plenty of legendaries that do a better job.
Well, you missed the blacksmith not having a Scottish accent. Shouldn't they all sound like Scotty in Star Trek or Griswold at least?
I hope so.
I guess that's a no. One thing you'll notice that Jay Wilson did not mention, although who knows if it was an oversight or just, he wasn't really speaking of the final game plan, but he didn't mention magical items. And those obviously weren't the mainstay of your gear in Diablo 2, but especially in certain patches, they could be very valuable. For a long time, there were modifiers like Cruel that could only appear on magical items. And Cruel gave you 201 to 300% enhanced damage. And for a long time, and especially in early D2X, the best weapons you could get before they put in these super powerful rune words was to buy a Cruel weapon from an NPC. And if you got a Cruel something with a good suffix, and especially if it turned out well with sockets, you could get up to 4 sockets on some weapon types in magical items. That was by far the most damaging weapon possible. Until, more better, bigger items came in later patches. So that doesn't appear to be part of their plan for D3. It seems like therefore magical items will just be fillers or something you want in a low-level character.
Well, I think it could also just be. Yeah, I mean, it's the magical items would just be, your fillers till you actually got a rare legendary to fill in those particular slots in your gear. That it probably at that rate, it's the suffixes, the prefixes, all the attributes are going to be the same for magic and rare, as well as the legendaries, or the legendaries might have their own special bonuses. But that probably just means that the rares are just going to have, more of those attributes than a magical item, making it, obviously more useful to use a rare as opposed to the magical items.
I'm okay with magical items not being necessarily useful in the end game. I remember when Cruel weapons were the way to go. But it sort of felt kind of weak that there's no unique or rare item in the game that could do more damage than a blue you buy from a vendor,
Yeah, which is a good point with World of Warcraft, mentioning that again. That there's whole tiers of gear. You have your green, which is somewhat equivalent to your standard gear that you would find like white items, and then you have the blue items, which would be more kind of equivalent to magical. Then you have the epics, which would be your sets and legendary or sets and uniques from Diablo 2. And the green items, and to a certain extent the blue items as well, their only real purpose at in-game is to be disenchanted for crafting materials, and that was it. They still dropped, you could find them off of mobs, but their only real purpose was to be disenchanted for crafting. And that will be what, magical items and, your, not as useful legendaries and rares end up being in Diablo 3 as well, as they just kind of drop and they're there to be salvaged, so that way you can make better items.
From what I understand, on WoW, the end-game gear is all pretty much pre-made. There's no real equivalent of rare items that you use at high levels. Everything is preset stuff.
Yeah, and the few things that are not preset that they've kind of introduced in Cataclysm normally is crappy in comparison to the ones with the preset bonuses.
And that is not something that they're doing in Diablo 3, at least from what they've told us. They want the Diablo game item system is more randomized.
Yeah, even
WoW, certainly.
Yeah, even with the crafting, they're going the aspect of crafting in Diablo 2, a couple set modifiers, and then they'll throw in a whole bunch of random stuff.
Which is cool. I mean, I think it's nice to have a mixture. There were some items, some of the uniques in D2 were obviously very much custom tailored for one type of build. I mean, to some extent, people would find a Titan's Revenge in D2X, and it was like, now I have to make a Javazon now. Because you had this one item that was just perfect for that class. And, the other class stuff, like the Barbarian Helms, the Paladin Shields and such, which, obviously were made just for one character class. So, I mean, it can be good to have one item, but then you don't want that item to be so good. Like, there was no reason to ever use any other Javelin with a Javazon until they eventually added some potentially better ones, later in many patches later. But
yeah, well, I mean, even though it was like the Javelin, it still had massive range on how much enhanced damage it gave and how much lifesteal. And like if you found an ethereal one, you were like rich because the damage was so much higher on even like a low enhanced damage ethereal one than on a normal one. So I mean, there was still a good amount of variety, even though we're still just talking about one unique weapon. And like you said, later they added more javelins that could potentially do more damage.
It kind of ties in with what I was going to say. I played a lot of PvP in Diablo 2, and what it came down to was who had the better quality of the same gear, and that frustrated me because everyone's basically running around with the same gear, and I don't want that in Diablo 3. I want there to be differences more. I understand that there's going to be the best gear, and everyone's going to be trying to use that, but if there's more variety.
Variety.
Thank you, Flux. That word. If there's more of that, I'd be much more happy.
So, gear sets. We've been told, since they were revealed, there are 18 different tiers of them, and just on Friday, Bashiak made a post saying that you would find them, people are kind of wondering if there's enough different looks and such, which I think is kind of a misremembering of what Diablo 2's armor looked like. But what Bashiak said, there's about 5 different points on this that I'm kind of facilitating between in my mind here, but he said that there would be, there's 18 different tiers, so obviously that seems, with 3 difficulty levels, it seems pretty obvious with our advanced math skills that you'll get 9 per tier. 6 per tier. Math is hard. And then Bashiak said 1 through 5 on normal, 6 through 10 on nightmare, and etc. And using my advanced calculus techniques, I determined that etc. in that case would equal 11 through 18.
Yeah.
So I hope he was just throwing numbers out without doing the math.
He said he did. Was.
Yeah.
It would seem a little weird to have, 11 through 18 in hell. Like you'd be upgrading your item type every, 5 minutes in hell then. So, there were 16 different looks of armor in Diablo 2. And in theory, there are 18 in Diablo 3. And of course, in Diablo 2, we had exceptional and elite item types. So, times 2 or times 3. But then that became kind of schizophrenic where you get to hell and suddenly you're wearing leather armor that's got more defense than your full plate mail kind of thing.
Right.
So do you guys like the, the sort of the steady improvement in item types that we're going to get in D3 with the gear sets?
I think it's
the look and the function and the name and everything else.
Yeah. It's better to have. Like you said, it felt really weird to be wearing leather armor that gave more bonuses than the full plate that I was just wearing in the previous difficulty.
I definitely like the gradual progression of gear, and it's slowly looking more and more badass all the way from level 1 to 60, as opposed to your gear kind of going through increasing. It's like I go from wearing padded armor and then leather, and now I've got full plate and the ancient forge, and then now I'm wearing padded armor again with a peasant hat, and constantly go through this up and down roller coaster of looking like you're a farmer as opposed to a full blown warrior. And that the steady progression, I think, will definitely win out. And I know that there have been some people, saying that, well, if we're all going to be using the tier 18 gear, we're all going to look the same. But I mean, there wasn't all that much variety, like you said. It's rose-colored glasses looking at the items from Diablo 2.
I would hope on that in-game concept that 16, 17, 18 were kind of comparable, just for instance.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that was the original
there'd be a little bit
intent.
of different. Yeah, there'd be a little difference in the base item, but you would hope the modifiers would be kind of, sometimes the level 16 hat would be better than the 18 hat, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
especially with the. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say in Diablo 2, the ranges and armor level overlapped pretty substantially, especially in the elite items, which often led people to opt for the lower armor potential in exchange for having to spend less strength to equip it. So I would imagine the armor ranges would overlap as well, like you were saying, for 16 to 18.
And armor wasn't really the big deciding point for armor. I mean, defense wasn't the deciding point for armor in D2 anyway, in many cases.
Right.
I mean, you're wearing leather gloves and, just some other, some skull hat or something instead of the heaviest armor for other stuff. So the highest defense rating for other stuff anyway.
Exactly. The majority of your gear you were wearing for the attributes and modifiers that it had, not for the actual, base armor. The weapons for melee characters, of course, you'd be looking at base damage a little bit more so than the other attributes that it had. But there's always going to be that one go-to thing that you're going to decide whether you want an upgrade or not. It's like once you get to the end of normal and you start having, not the leather gloves, but you start having the demon hide gloves start dropping, but they're not high enough to get magical properties to them yet. They're still not that useful, even though they have 10 times the defense of the gloves that you're using right now. They've got no modifiers, so you just pass them up until you actually start getting good ones to drop.
Yeah, the other thing that goes with the item tiers and the gear sets. Okay, well, there's one other question that I've been wondering ever since they announced them, we still don't know the answer to. Are there 18 types of every single item in the game, every single armor? Or are there only like 18 body armors, and then there's like 15 hats and 12 gloves and 10 belts, that kind of thing?
I was about to ask the exact same question.
We don't know. I've mused on that. I sent that to Twitter. I've asked Bastiak directly, and he's just never really replied to that. I've seen many people ask that of him.
One legendary for each one, or are there going to be multiples?
That's a lot of unique belts,
Yeah, it really is.
There were only 5 types of gloves and belts and boots in D2, but then that was multiplied by 3 with the exceptional and the elite. Right. So in theory, there were 15 unique belts in D2, more or less. I think they might have skipped a couple of the elite ones, but then, they added in over time, and they had set ones as well. So It's actually not that different.
Yeah, I think like the original.
But, there's not going to be 18 different looks of belt, I don't think. Go ahead, Neinball.
Yeah, I think it's like the original intent when they debuted all those item sets was to, kind of a solution to the clown look, of using all the different assorted pieces of wearing like a leather hat and then full plate and other things like that. And, that really only applies visually. So we might not see 18, actual individual item types for the non-visual pieces, such as boots or belts, gloves, because like in Diablo II, the only real things that affected the actual look of your character was your helmet and your chest.
Yeah, they've never really specified how the items will look. We say there's these 18 tiers, and if there's 18 different body armors, and there's only 12 shoulders, then, does shoulder number 9 does that match perfectly with body armor, 13 and 14? Or not?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. They're supposed to, the look is supposed to gradually increase over time to where, a tier 1 is going to maybe look a little weird, putting it with a tier 11, but a tier 1 will still mesh well with like a tier 4. Start looking a little bit weird in a tier 5. So that way it will give it a gradual differentiation in the actual look over time. So that way you can get slow upgrades from one tier here, one tier there. You can get a tier 7 chest while the rest of your stuff is all like, tier 4, but it still looks good because it's only gradually different. And that's only when you go like the huge gaps in the tier levels will it actually look out of place.
But then the question with that is we get these high level sets that are kind of themed, like that. There's that cool tentacle set for the witch doctor. And like the barbarian has ones that has like elephant shoulder pads. They kind of match his hat and such. And you wonder if you throw the elephant shoulder, or if you have the tentacle set, you need like the hat's got little waving tentacles and so do the shoulders and so does the body armor. And if you have just the hat and the shoulders and a different body armor, would that look funky with, these little feelers on your helmet and your shoulders but not on your chest? And that can be, that can be bad for stylistic, but at the same time, maybe that's kind of cool because then you'd be very encouraged to find a useful armor of that tier just so you'd have that complete look.
Yeah, I mean, like my point is like you have that tentacle set, the actual like the tier below it and the tier above it still have that kind of tentacle look, or if not the tentacle look, the coloration or the feel of it. It might not have tentacles, but it looks like it's made out of, kind of like a slimy, rubbery substance that, meshes well with it. And it's just that,
You
graduation.
just described my last date, actually.
I was about to say something about that.
A slimy, rubbery substance. Oh, well. You have to pay extra to get the flesh tone.
That's right.
So, hopefully, we're hoping that the sets will match a little, but as we've all admitted to not really caring much about the armor dyes, I don't think we can complain about visuals too deeply. We all wore shakos when we found them in D2, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Hey, I have a question for you guys who have actually played the demo. Did you ever go through and systematically remove one piece of armor at a time and see which pieces of armor actually control the look of your character?
No. I really didn't care enough about how it looked. I just cared more about killing things.
Right. Yeah, it seems like a silly thing to spend your demo time doing.
I was in the press room in 08 and 09, and I would play individual characters. There's no time limit up there, so you can play for over an hour and in a given game if you want, as long as some Korean guy's not behind you stomping his foot and scowling too much with his camcorder. And even then, I played around quite a bit more with the items. I really examined stuff and changed around, looked at modifiers some, but I didn't go to the point of really seeing how it looked on the character. And like Neinball said, when you're playing it on the show floor for 15 minutes at a pop, you really don't even look at items at all. You just want to kill things.
Right.
I was under the assumption that everything showed up. That's what I thought, anyway.
That would make sense. Boots and gloves and
and they
shoulders.
can do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did have this debate some months ago in the news, and I think Bashiok made a post at some point saying that nothing changes its appearance based on other items. Like we were thinking if there's only 10 kinds of belts, maybe, the belt looks a little different when it matches with different armors. Body armors, I mean. And apparently that's not the case, but I think it'll be like what Neinball suggested where, it's close enough to kind of look like it fits as long as you're within, 2 or 3 tiers either direction.
Right, that makes sense.
And the other big thing with the tiers in the gear sets is it seems likely that, certain modifiers, prefixes and suffixes can only spawn with certain other gear sets, it'll progress. I mean, you couldn't get cruel on, the basic weakest kind of bow or sword or whatever in Diablo 2. It only was possible to spawn on items above a certain level. And that, D2 wasn't really set up in tiers of gear quite the way it is in D3. But in theory, there'll be, plus $500 resistances or something will be like the highest level of some mod. And that will probably only be possible on, just for, tier 13 and above kind of thing. So there will be sort of checkpoints, or you will reach choke points at least in your gear where you'll say, I need to get to the next gear before I can have a chance to get this cool modifier on my stuff. So it's not purely a fashion decision, or it's not just that you're trying to find the cool uniques in tier 14 or something.
Kind of going back to what we said before about the each armor piece showing up, I have downloaded the initial gameplay video on my computer, where the barb gets the full plate mail set, and I watched it, and every single piece showed up. And that's back in 08, but...
Oh, right on.
Yeah. Everything shows up. The belt, boots, shoulders, pants, everything.
Yeah, he gets that chest with the wraiths in it, right? And then it pops like 10 items, and he puts them on one at a time, and you can see the little Barbie dress-up system going.
Oh, right on.
So any other there's lots of other item stuff we could talk about, but we're trying to keep the podcast to a reasonable length this week, unlike last week. There's tons of other stuff. I have notes about caster weapons and one-handed versus two-handed and swords and shields and all kinds of stuff, but we will have to do another items-themed podcast at some other time.
Yeah, when we know more.
Yeah, and as soon as we start getting more information, we might get a whole system reveal on item sets next week for all we know. It might change everything, but definitely lots more to discuss on that topic. Any last thoughts from you guys?
We all know that beta starts on July 1st.
Oh, of course.
Of course, yes. Which is
12:01 a.m.
You're right, which is 3 weeks away. So.
Oh, I can't wait.
God, 3 weeks. That's soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. It seems. Does anybody really think it'll start in early July?
No.
We asked this last week, and you said no.
Yeah,
early July.
I'm putting my money on late August after the Q2 conference call.
I'm on to second that motion.
I mean, one of the other things about timing like releases with BlizzCon, I don't think that they've ever actually given a release date for a beta or a start of a expansion or a game at BlizzCon ever. They've always done a press release. I mean, even Cataclysm, they did a press release 2 weeks before BlizzCon. They easily could have waited till the convention. So I think they actually put that information out as soon as they feel that they're ready to give it, and not actually having to wait for their own convention to do that.
Didn't Cataclysms get leaked, though, because somebody found data mining, they found stuff about when some arena kind of thing was going to
Yeah,
I think they had to
remember
rush
that.
the Cataclysm announcement because the fans had already reported it, basically.
That is a good point. That is a possibility because I do remember that they data mined the arena start date information for when the game was supposed to load up.
See, I follow World of Warcraft.
Moo.
Moo!
That must have been fun for the D2 guys, getting this in the founder and doing that crap.
Yes.
Yeah, this just makes me think that I really do hope that there is no, secret unicorn level. Just imagine what we're going to have to do after the podcast with that.
We'll have to have sex with a rainbow, apparently.